Grief is a journey, a process as natural as the setting sun, yet it can feel like a storm that never passes. Grief looks different for everyone, manifesting in a myriad of emotions, thoughts, and physical sensations. It's that heavy ache in your chest when you wake up alone, the tears that come without warning, the moments of disbelief when you remember they're truly gone. It's the exhaustion that settles deep in your bones, the forgetfulness, the anger, and sometimes the haunting numbness. Grief can be triggered by many things: the death of a loved one, the end of a significant relationship, the loss of a job, the fading of a long-held dream, chronic illness, or the loss of health. Each loss carries its own weight, and no one grief is ever exactly the same. Dr. J. William Worden, a pioneer in the field of bereavement, describes normal grief as encompassing a wide range of symptoms that touch on the emotional, physical, cognitive, behavioral, and spiritual aspects of a person's life. These symptoms are not just limited to sadness or crying, but can manifest in various ways, reflecting the complexity of the grieving process. Emotional symptoms. 1. Sadness. Deep, pervasive sadness is common, often accompanied by crying or feeling on the verge of tears. 2. Anger. Anger can be directed at the deceased, oneself or others, often stemming from feelings of helplessness or injustice. 3. Guilt. Feelings of guilt may arise, particularly if one feels responsible for the loss or regrets things left unsaid or undone. 4. Anxiety. Anxiety can manifest as a fear of facing life without the deceased or concerns about the future. 5. Loneliness. A profound sense of loneliness may emerge, especially when the deceased was a significant part of one's daily life. 6. Yearning. This involves a deep, aching desire to be with the deceased again, often leading to dreams or thoughts of reunion. 7. Relief. Particularly in cases where the deceased suffered from a prolonged illness, feelings of relief that the person is no longer in pain can occur, which can sometimes be confusing or guilt-inducing. 8. Numbness. Some people may feel emotionally numb, unable to fully process the loss immediately. Physical symptoms. 1. Fatigue. Grief can be exhausting, leading to persistent tiredness and low energy levels. 2. Changes in appetite. This can range from a loss of appetite to overeating as a way of coping. 3. Sleep disturbances. Insomnia or hypersomnia are common, as grief often disrupts normal sleep patterns. 4. Somatic complaints. These may include headaches, stomach aches, chest pain, or other physical symptoms that have no apparent medical cause but are linked to emotional distress. 5. Weakness. A sense of physical weakness where even simple tasks feel overwhelming can occur. 6. Tightness in the chest or throat. This sensation is often linked to the emotional weight of grief, making it feel as if there's a physical block in the chest or throat. Cognitive symptoms. 1. Disbelief. Difficulty accepting the reality of the loss, often accompanied by thoughts like, "This can't be true," or "I can't believe this happened." 2. Confusion. Grief can cloud thinking, making it hard to concentrate or remember things. 3. Preoccupation. Thoughts about the deceased may dominate, making it difficult to focus on anything else. 4. Hallucinations. It's not uncommon for grieving individuals to momentarily think they see or hear the deceased, or to feel their presence. Behavioral symptoms. 1. Social withdrawal. Pulling away from friends and family, preferring to be alone with one's thoughts and feelings. 2. Restlessness. A sense of restlessness or the need to keep busy as a way to avoid confronting the pain. 3. Crying. Frequent crying spells, which are a natural outlet for the overwhelming emotions that accompany grief. 4. Visiting places or keeping possessions. Returning to places associated with the deceased or holding on to their possessions as a way to maintain a connection. 5. Avoidance. Avoiding reminders of the deceased, such as places, people, or activities that trigger painful memories. Spiritual symptoms. 1. Questioning beliefs. Grief can lead to a crisis of faith, with questions about the meaning of life or the existence of an afterlife. 2. Searching for meaning, a deep need to understand why the loss occurred, often leading to existential exploration. 3. Strengthening of faith. Conversely, some may find their faith deepened, using spiritual practices as a source of comfort and connection to the deceased. These symptoms are part of the normal grieving process, a natural response to loss. They reflect the deep impact that the death of a loved one has on all aspects of a person's life. While these symptoms can be intense and distressing, they typically begin to diminish in intensity over time as the individual works through their grief and begins to heal. But sometimes grief becomes more than just a storm to weather. It becomes complicated grief. This is when the natural process of grieving is stuck or prolonged, and the intensity of the grief doesn't seem to diminish over time. It's when the pain feels just as raw months or even years after the loss as it did the day it happened. Complicated grief can manifest as chronic longing, severe emotional pain, persistent disbelief, or an inability to re-engage with life. It differs from normal grief in that it prevents the person from moving forward, keeping them trapped in a cycle of sorrow. For example, imagine Sarah, who lost her spouse 2 years ago. She continues to set a place for him at the dinner table, unable to accept that he is gone. The house remains exactly as it was the day he died, untouched by time. She avoids friends, family, and any situation that reminds her of his absence. This is complicated grief, a grief that lingers, casting a shadow over every aspect of life. In contrast, consider Tom, who also lost his spouse. Tom mourns deeply, but over time, he begins to find ways to reconnect with the world. He attends support groups, begins to share stories of his loved one, and eventually starts to find moments of joy again. His grief, while painful, doesn't stop him from moving forward. This is what normal grief looks like. It's a process that, though challenging, allows for healing and growth. Mourning, the outward expression of grief, is crucial to this process. It's through mourning that we give voice to our pain, honor our loss, and begin to heal. Dr. Worden outlines 4 tasks of grief, a framework for understanding how we can navigate this complex journey. 1. To accept the reality of the loss. This means fully acknowledging that the person is gone and will not return. It's not enough to simply know this intellectually. We must also accept it emotionally. For example, you might start by removing some of your loved one's belongings or visiting their grave. 2. To process the pain of grief. Grief brings pain, and this pain must be felt and processed. This can involve crying, talking about the loss, or finding creative outlets like writing or art to express your feelings. 3. To adjust to a world without the deceased. This involves taking on roles or tasks that your loved one once fulfilled and finding new ways to navigate life without them. It might mean learning to cook if your partner always handled meals, or managing finances if they were the one who paid the bills. 4. To find an enduring connection with the deceased while embarking on a new life. This is about finding a way to maintain a connection with your loved one while also moving forward with your life. It might involve keeping certain traditions alive or finding comfort in memories, even as you pursue new relationships or interests. These tasks are not steps to be checked off in a linear fashion. They are a fluid process, often revisited multiple times as we continue to heal. They help us to integrate the loss into our lives in a way that allows us to live fully again. Dr. Worden would also emphasize the importance of understanding that grief is not a one-size-fits-all experience. He recognized that individuals might grieve in different ways, and that these tasks can be approached differently depending on the person's unique circumstances, personality, and cultural background. For example, someone might spend more time processing the pain of grief, while another might find it crucial to quickly establish a new life without the deceased to cope with the loss. There are researched reasons that might make it necessary to work through these tasks more consciously. Some people, due to their upbringing, personality, or life circumstances, might find it harder to grieve openly or to accept help. This is why it's so important to understand that grief is not something to be ashamed of, and mourning is a natural, healthy response to loss. So how can we grieve and mourn well? The journey of grieving and mourning is deeply personal, yet there are ways we can approach this journey to ensure that it leads to healing rather than prolonged suffering. 1. Allow yourself to feel. One of the most crucial aspects of grieving well is giving yourself permission to feel all the emotions that come with loss. This means embracing the sadness, anger, guilt, relief, or even numbness without judgment. It's important to remember that all of these feelings are valid. Suppressing your emotions or pretending they don't exist can prolong your grief and prevent healing. Allowing yourself to fully experience these emotions is not a sign of weakness. Rather, it's a necessary step toward processing your grief. 2. Express your grief. Grief needs an outlet. Whether through talking, writing, art, music, or another form of creative expression, finding ways to express your grief can be incredibly therapeutic. Sharing your feelings with trusted friends, family members, or a support group can help you feel less isolated. Expressing grief can also mean participating in rituals or traditions that honor your loved one, such as lighting a candle, visiting a special place, or celebrating their life on important dates. These acts of mourning allow you to externalize your grief and begin to work through it. 3. Embrace rituals and ceremonies. Rituals and ceremonies provide structure and a sense of closure during the grieving process. Whether it's a funeral, a memorial service, or a personal ritual like writing a letter to your loved one, these acts can be powerful tools for acknowledging the loss and beginning the healing process. Rituals help create a safe space to express your emotions and connect with others who are also grieving, reinforcing the idea that you are not alone in your sorrow. 4. Lean on your support system. Grief can be overwhelming, and it's essential to lean on others for support. This might mean reaching out to family and friends, joining a support group, or connecting with a spiritual or community leader. Talking about your grief with those who care about you can provide comfort and help you process your emotions. It's important to remember that you don't have to go through this alone. Allowing others to share in your grief can lighten the emotional burden and provide a sense of connection and understanding. 5. Practice self-compassion. Grieving is exhausting both emotionally and physically. It's vital to treat yourself with kindness and patience during this time. Recognize that grief is a process that takes time, and there's no right or wrong way to do it. Avoid comparing your grief to others. Everyone's journey is unique. Practicing self-compassion means acknowledging your pain, allowing yourself to rest when needed, and avoiding self-criticism. Understand that it's okay to have good days and bad days, and give yourself the grace to move through your grief at your own pace. 6. Create new routines and traditions. As you navigate life without your loved one, it's essential to find new ways to live meaningfully. This might involve creating new routines or traditions that honor your loved one's memory while also helping you move forward. For example, you might start a new hobby, volunteer, or take up an activity that brings you joy and fulfillment. These new routines can help you adjust to a life that's different from the one you had before, while still keeping the memory of your loved one alive in meaningful ways. 7. Seek understanding and meaning. Grief often brings about deep questions and a search for meaning. You might find yourself wondering why the loss happened or what it means for your life moving forward. Engaging in this search for understanding can be a crucial part of the healing process. This might involve spiritual exploration, philosophical reflection, or simply talking through your thoughts with others. Finding meaning doesn't necessarily mean finding answers, but rather making peace with the unknown and discovering how the loss fits into the broader narrative of your life. 8. Balance remembering and living. Part of grieving well involves finding a balance between remembering your loved one and continuing to live your life. It's important to honor your loved one's memory, but it's also essential to re-engage with the world around you. This might mean finding ways to incorporate memories of your loved one into your daily life without letting those memories prevent you from moving forward. For example, you might keep a special item of theirs in a place of honor, or set aside time to reminisce, but also make efforts to connect with others, pursue your interests, and set goals for the future. 9. Addressing false stereotypes and expectations. Society often imposes expectations on how one should grieve, suggesting that there's a right way or a specific timeline. However, it's important to reject these false stereotypes and understand that grief is unique to each person. Some may feel intense emotions immediately, while others may take time to process their loss. Some grieve quietly, while others may be more expressive. There is no one-size-fits-all approach to grief. Understanding this can help you grieve authentically without feeling pressured to meet others' expectations. 10. Allow yourself to evolve. Grief changes you. It's a process that can reshape your perspective, your relationships, and your sense of self. Allow yourself to evolve through this process. Embrace the ways in which grief transforms you, even as you continue to honor your past. It's okay to change, to grow, and to find new paths forward. Recognize that grief can be a catalyst for personal growth, leading to greater resilience, empathy, and depth of character. By approaching grief with an open heart and mind, and by giving yourself the space and permission to mourn, you can navigate this journey in a way that fosters healing and allows you to eventually find peace. If trying on your own doesn't work, you might want to consider exploring professional help. Sometimes the weight of grief is too heavy to carry alone, and that's okay. Seeking help is a sign of strength, not weakness. As the great C.S. Lewis once said, "No one ever told me that grief felt so much like fear." Let this remind us that grief is not something to be feared, but something to be faced with courage and compassion and hope.